My name is Eleanor, and I'm 66 years old. A few weeks ago, my own daughter, the light of my life, accidentally sent me a voice message that was meant for her husband. What I heard about myself in that audio, the sheer, unadulterated coldness and meticulous calculation in her voice, didn't just break my heart. It shattered it into a million pieces, then lit a fire of cold fury in its place. It made me pack a single bag in the dead of night and walk out of my own home the very next morning with a plan she would never, ever see coming. "David, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore." My daughter Emily's voice, a voice I had once thought was the sweetest sound on earth, crackled through the phone's tiny speaker. It was laced with a venom so potent it felt like it was physically poisoning me, freezing the very blood in my veins. "She's a complete and utter nuisance. She gets into everything, hovers over us, asks too many questions. On top of that, we're already spending so much of our money on her. I've been looking into some cheap retirement homes. I found one on the outskirts of town that only costs $800 a month." In that single devastating moment, the familiar floral patterned tiles of my own kitchen seemed to warp and bend, the floor opening up to swallow me whole. My hand, holding a half-full mug of tea, began to tremble. This was my Emily, my baby, the same daughter for whom I had worked double shifts at the town diner, my feet swelling and my back screaming in protest, just so she could have the brand-name sneakers all the other kids had. The same daughter for whom I'd sold my own mother's precious pearl earrings, the last beautiful, sentimental thing I owned, to help pay the exorbitant tuition at North Carolina State. The same daughter who had sobbed uncontrollably in my arms for a solid week when her first fiancé left her just months before the wedding, and I'd drained my last emergency savings account to help her get back on her feet, no questions asked. But the message wasn't over. The true horror was yet to come. What came next was not just a dagger to the heart. It was a slow, twisting blade of the deepest betrayal imaginable. Also, I've already checked the house papers. It's in her name, but I found a way to transfer it to our name without her even realizing. My cousin Cindy, who works at the county clerk's office, is going to help me. It'll just take a few processing fees and a bit of creative paperwork to get it done quietly. My hands were shaking so violently now that the tea mug slipped, crashing to the floor and shattering, hot liquid splashing across my ankles. I didn't even feel the burn. My own child, my Emily, was actively plotting to steal my house. The only thing of real, tangible value I had managed to build in this world. The house I'd bought with a down payment earned over 20 years of backbreaking, thankless work. The house where I'd painted her childhood bedroom sunshine yellow with my own hands, where we'd baked Christmas cookies every year, where the pencil marks measuring her height were still faint on the doorframe. The house whose 30-year mortgage I had finally triumphantly paid off just 2 years ago. The pain was sharp, physical, a crushing weight on my chest, but it was the laugh at the end of the message that obliterated what was left of my soul. "In a month, Mom will be settled in the home, and we'll own everything. We can finally live in peace without that bitter old woman controlling our lives and judging our every move." If you have ever felt the most profound, soul-crushing betrayal from the one person you love more than life itself, you'll know exactly the abyss I was staring into at that moment. But what my daughter Emily didn't know is that her mother isn't as naive or as fragile as she so clearly believed. And after 66 years on this earth, I've learned that sometimes the only way to fight back against cunning, calculated cruelty is with a little bit of cold, hard cunning of your own. Before I tell you how I meticulously turned the tables on them, if you're finding this story compelling, please take a moment to hit that like button. Leave a comment below with the city you're listening from, and subscribe to Aunt Millie's Tales so you don't miss what happens next. Your support truly means the world. I couldn't sleep a single minute that night. The betrayal, the words, her laugh churned in my stomach like acid, burning away every sweet memory I had ever cherished. At dawn, I rose not as a grieving mother, but as a woman reborn in ice and fire, a cold determination settling deep in my bones. I put on my most elegant crimson pantsuit, a symbol of power I didn't know I still possessed, gathered all my important documents into a worn leather briefcase, and walked out of my house with a ghost of a smile on my lips and a multifaceted plan taking shape that would change everything, forever. To understand the depth of her treachery, you need to understand the bedrock of sacrifice upon which her entire life was built. I grew up in a small, gritty, blue-collar town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where the air tasted of coal dust and hard work. I was raised in a family where love wasn't spoken in flowery words. It was measured in calloused hands and selfless sacrifice. My mother, God rest her soul, was a brilliant seamstress who worked from the dim light of sunrise to long past sunset, her fingers often raw and bleeding, just to put a simple, hot meal on the table for me and my two brothers. We never had much money, but we had a bedrock of love, respect, and unwavering family values. "Eleanor," my mother would say to me, her voice as soft as the velvet she was hemming, "in this life, the only thing that truly matters, the only thing that endures, is family. And for your family, you give everything, down to the very last drop of your being." That lesson was etched onto my soul. When I found myself pregnant with Emily at a naive 18, her father evaporated like morning mist. One night he was there, whispering sweet promises of a future, a marriage, a white picket fence. The next morning, he and all his promises were gone. His parents, wealthy and cold-hearted, all but slammed their heavy oak door in my face, their disdainful words still ringing in my ears. Their son wasn't going to ruin his bright future for some teenage mistake. In that moment of utter despair, my mother became my rock, my fortress. "That child," she told me, wrapping her strong, comforting arms around my shaking shoulders, "is a blessing, not a mistake. She is going to have everything we couldn't. We'll raise her together, and she'll be a good, strong, independent woman." My mother, without a moment's hesitation, sold her only 2 gold bracelets, precious heirlooms from her own mother, to buy a sturdy crib and everything a newborn could possibly need. When Emily was born, it felt as though an angel had descended into our small, worn-out apartment. She was the most beautiful baby I had ever laid eyes on, with wide, curious ocean blue eyes and a heart-melting smile that could light up the darkest, most difficult day. My mother and I were an unbreakable team. I started cleaning office buildings at night when I was 19, the harsh smell of ammonia becoming my constant companion. The pay was barely enough to get by, but every single cent was for her. I remember her first day of kindergarten so vividly, it feels like yesterday. We had to walk the 2 miles because we couldn't afford the bus fare. But her little plaid uniform was perfectly pressed, and her second-hand shoes were shined to a mirror finish. The other mothers pulled up in shiny new SUVs, dressed in expensive clothes, and I felt so small and insignificant in my faded, patched-up dress, with my calloused, bleach-stained hands. But when Emily threw her tiny arms around my neck, kissed my cheek, and whispered with all the sincerity in her little heart, "Thank you, Mommy. You're the best mommy in the whole wide world," I knew every sacrifice was a stone in the foundation of her future. The years flew by in a relentless blur of the same exhausting routine. Wake up at 5 a.m., make Emily a hot breakfast, walk her to school, work 2 physically demanding cleaning jobs until 6 p.m., pick her up, help with her homework until my eyes burned, and tuck her into bed with a story. On weekends, I took on extra shifts waiting tables at a local diner, all so she could have a better life than mine. A life without the persistent smell of disinfectant clinging to her clothes and hair. My mother passed away from a cruel, swift cancer when Emily was 8. But before she left this world, she made me promise something that became my guiding star. Eleanor, that precious child is your greatest treasure. Give her an education, give her unconditional love, and she will take care of you when you're old. Our family's blood is good. She won't fail you. Those words became my mantra, the sacred fuel that kept my engine running when exhaustion and despair threatened to consume me. When Emily turned 16, I worked overtime for 6 solid months, taking every extra shift I could to throw her the lavish Sweet 16 party she'd always dreamed of, the kind she saw in magazines. I spent over $3,000 on that single night. Money I had been painfully saving to finally fix our perpetually leaky roof. But seeing the look of pure, unadulterated joy on her face that night, watching her glow in her beautiful, shimmering dress as she danced with her friends, felt like the best investment I could ever make. "Mom, I don't know how you do it," she told me that night, her eyes shining with what I believed were genuine tears of gratitude. "You give me everything when you have almost nothing. I swear, when I grow up, I'm going to give all this back to you, 1,000 times over." Throughout high school, Emily was the daughter every parent dreamed of. A model student with straight A's, the star of the school plays, the one all her teachers said had a brilliant, limitless future. But keeping up with that success wasn't cheap. The books, the uniforms, the field trips, the debate club fees, it all cost money I simply didn't have. I started cleaning a third office building on Sundays, my only day of rest, just to make ends meet. When the time came for college, the acceptance letter from North Carolina State was a golden ticket to a new life, but the tuition was a terrifying mountain. $20,000 a year. I was barely making that in total. It seemed absolutely impossible, but a mother, a true mother, does the impossible for her child. I took out a second mortgage on my small, humble house. I sold the simple diamond engagement ring her father had given me, the last physical memento of a beautiful, broken promise. I even sold my mother's antique, ornate sewing machine, a piece of my heart. "My daughter," I told Emily, my voice thick with emotion on the day we drove to Raleigh for her enrollment. "I never got to go to college, but you are going to be a professional. You'll have a degree, you'll work in a beautiful, air-conditioned office, and you will never, ever have to scrub another person's toilet in your life." That day, I wept with pride and hope as I watched my daughter sign the papers that would secure her bright, promising future. For all 4 years of her business degree, I worked like a machine possessed. Emily needed money for textbooks, for projects, for new clothes, so she'd fit in with the other wealthier students. I gave her everything, no matter the cost to me, even if it meant I was eating beans and rice for dinner a whole week straight. Her graduation day was the single proudest, most triumphant moment of my life. Seeing her walk across that massive stage in her cap and gown, hearing her name called out, the thunderous applause washing over us. It felt as if all my sacrifices had finally come to glorious fruition. After the ceremony, she hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, her tears soaking the shoulder of my dress. "Mom, this degree is as much yours as it is mine. I never, ever would have made it without you. I promise you, now that I'm a professional, you'll never have to worry about a single thing ever again." A year later, Emily met David at her new marketing job in Charlotte. At first, I was overjoyed for her. He seemed like a perfect gentleman, a supervisor at a logistics company, ambitious, stable, and he seemed to absolutely adore my daughter. When he formally asked for her hand in marriage, I cried with pure, unadulterated happiness, thinking Emily would finally have the stable, two-parent family I could never give her. But the wedding was another huge financial sacrifice. Emily, influenced by her new friends and lifestyle, wanted a fairy tale wedding, one straight out of a glossy magazine. The historic venue, the designer dress, the live band, the elaborate floral arrangements, it all added up to over $10,000. I took out another high-interest loan to make her dream come true. The first few years of their marriage were wonderful, a blissful period where I thought all my dreams had been realized. They'd visit every Sunday for my pot roast dinner. Emily always helped with my bills. "Mom, now that I'm working, it's my turn to take care of you the way you took care of me," she'd say, slipping me $100 for groceries. I finally felt it, the validation, the return on a lifetime of emotional and financial investment. I believed with all my heart that I had a grateful, loving daughter. But everything, absolutely everything, changed 3 years ago when David was laid off from his job and they started having serious money problems. The requests for money started subtly, then became more frequent and desperate, and as always, I couldn't say no. First, it was $1,000 to cover their rent for a month. Then, $2,500 for a down payment on a new car after their old one died. Then, $3,000 to pay off a maxed-out credit card. It all began to shift, to sour after that last loan. At first, it was small, insidious things I brushed off as the natural stress of their financial struggles. But now, after hearing that horrifying, soul-destroying message, I understand. It wasn't stress. It was the beginning of a cold, calculated, and monstrous plan to systematically erase me from their lives. The first sign was the end of the cherished Sunday dinners. "Mom, we're just so incredibly busy with David's new job search," Emily would say, her voice strained over the phone. "You know how it is. We really need to focus on our future." I understood, or at least I told myself I did. Then came the unanswered phone calls. I'd call in the morning. "Mom, I'm walking into a meeting. I'll call you right back." In the afternoon. "Oh, Mom, I'm at the grocery store. Can't talk." At night. "Mom, we're just sitting down to eat. Let's talk tomorrow." That promised tomorrow rarely, if ever, came. Then came the hurtful, passive-aggressive comments, cleverly disguised as loving concern. "Mom, David says he's noticed you've been a little forgetful lately," she told me during one of our increasingly brief and superficial calls. "Are you absolutely sure you're okay living all by yourself in that big house?" At your age, anything could happen. I laughed it off nervously, but a poisonous seed of doubt had been planted. One afternoon, I decided to surprise them with a freshly baked pineapple upside-down cake, David's absolute favorite. When I knocked, I could hear laughter and conversation inside, but it took them nearly 5 minutes to open the door. "Oh, Mom, what a surprise," Emily said, a wide, strained smile plastered on her face that didn't reach her eyes. Her cousin Cindy, the one who worked at the county clerk's office, was inside, a stack of official-looking papers spread across the kitchen table. When they saw me, Cindy hastily and awkwardly stuffed the documents into a large manila folder. "Hello, Aunt Eleanor." She greeted me with a sickly sweet smile I'd always distrusted. "Just helping Emily with some of David's complicated health insurance forms." But I had clearly caught a glimpse of my full name and address typed on the top sheet before she managed to hide it. "Why do you need papers with my name on them?" I asked. My curiosity piqued. Emily and Cindy exchanged a look I now understand was pure, unadulterated panic. It's just to update the emergency contacts and beneficiaries on the insurance, Mom, Emily said smoothly, a little too quickly. You know, in case anything ever happens to us, you're our only family. That explanation calmed me at the time, but later, the forgetfulness they accused me of started to feel orchestrated and manufactured by them. They'd invite me to lunch at a specific restaurant, and when I arrived, they wouldn't be there. Oh, Mom, we are so sorry. We completely forgot to tell you we had to cancel. David had a last-minute work emergency, they'd claim hours later. This happened 3 times. The 4th time, I sat alone in that bustling restaurant for an entire hour, feeling like a complete and utter fool as happy families all around me laughed and ate together. They began methodically excluding me from family events. I found out from my next-door neighbor, a lovely woman named Rose, that they'd hosted a big backyard barbecue for David's birthday. How strange you weren't there, Eleanor, she'd said innocently. When I later confronted Emily, she replied with feigned surprise. Oh, Mom, it was just a really casual thing with our work friends. We didn't want to bother you with all the noise. But the final, insidious nail in the coffin of my naivety was when they decided to move into my house temporarily. Mom, they're fumigating our entire apartment building for termites, and we need a place to stay for a month or so, Emily explained, her voice dripping with false sincerity. Besides, this way we can spend more quality time with you. I was so happy, so pathetically grateful, thinking we'd finally reconnect. Instead, from the very moment they arrived, my own beloved home became a hostile prison. David complained about everything: my ancient television, my slow internet speed, the water pressure in the shower. Eleanor, this house needs a lot of expensive work, he'd say with a sigh. Maintaining a big place like this at your age must be a real financial and physical burden. Emily started reorganizing my life without asking my permission. Mom, these old dishes are chipped and mismatched. I'm replacing them with a new set, she'd announce. And honestly, these clothes in your closet are so dated, we should just donate them and get you some new things. My home, my sanctuary, stopped feeling like my own. Then came the constant, hushed conversations that would cease the exact moment I entered a room. One night, I overheard David speaking in a low voice on the back patio. Yeah, we're already here. No, she doesn't suspect a thing. Cindy says she can have the final paperwork ready in 2 weeks. When I stepped outside and asked who he was talking to, he quickly claimed it was his boss discussing a new project. They started taking control of my finances under the guise of helping me. Mom, just let me handle the utility bills for you online, Emily offered. You shouldn't be worrying about these things. I later realized she was using that access to go through my bank statements. Mom, why did you withdraw $200 in cash? She'd interrogate me with a frown. You need to be more careful with your money. The most painful part was hearing them talk about me when they thought I wasn't listening. I was in the garden, trimming my roses, when I heard Richard tell someone on the phone, my mother-in-law is getting harder and harder to handle. She's becoming very stubborn and difficult in her old age. Emily laughed in the background and added, Tell me about it. Lately, she forgets things all the time and gets really defensive when we try to help. They began actively, maliciously manufacturing a narrative about my supposed mental decline to outsiders. My oldest and dearest friend, Martha, came to visit, and Emily told her in a conspiratorial whisper, Oh, Martha, my mom has been so confused lately. Just yesterday, she tried to go for a walk at 10 p.m. because she thought it was morning. A complete and utter, vicious lie. But I saw the look of pity and concern in my friend's eyes. Strange visitors started arriving at my house. A doctor, who was a friend of David's, came to check my blood pressure. A social worker, who was a friend of Emily's, wanted to evaluate my living conditions. During one of these evaluations, I overheard the so-called doctor telling Emily in the living room, "Ma'am, your mother seems physically fine for her age, but I'll be sure to note in my official report that she shows clear signs of mild, age-related cognitive confusion." I was standing in the kitchen, perfectly lucid and boiling with a silent rage, while this stranger, this conspirator, fabricated lies about my sanity. The pressure inside my own home became unbearable. They were methodically, relentlessly chipping away at my independence, my autonomy, and my dignity, all with sickly, sweet smiles plastered on their faces, constantly telling me it was all for my own good, because they loved me so, so much. And then came that fateful Tuesday afternoon, when a simple, careless technological error, a misplaced tap on a smartphone screen, brought their entire monstrous, diabolical plan crashing down into the harsh, unforgiving light. That was the day my world, as I knew it, ceased to exist. I was making a cup of chamomile tea to soothe my frayed nerves when my phone buzzed with the notification. A voice message from Emily. I smiled to myself, thinking she was letting me know they'd be late for dinner. How pathetic my hope was. How naive I had been. I pressed the play button, never in a million years imagining that in the next 3 minutes, my entire life, my past, my future, would be torn to shreds. "David, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore." The message played out, a horrifying monologue of pure, unadulterated greed and contempt. Every single word was a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. My own daughter, the child I had devoted every waking moment of my life to, was talking about me as if I were a piece of old, inconvenient furniture that needed to be discarded. The $800 price tag for the nursing home was exactly the amount I had been giving them each month from my small pension to help with their expenses. They were planning to use my own money to imprison me. The message continued, each sentence more monstrous than the last, revealing the full scope of their treachery. The detailed plan with Cindy to forge my signature on legal documents and steal my home. A home valued at nearly $500,000 in the current Charlotte market. The intricate lies they had already been feeding the director of the St. Francis nursing home. I explained the situation to him. Her voice continued, as cold and sharp as ice. I told him my mother has early-stage dementia and that it's become dangerous for her to live alone. He was very understanding and sympathetic. He said they see cases like this all the time. I've already signed all the preliminary admission papers to hold her spot. My legs finally gave out from under me, and I sank to the cold kitchen floor, the shattered teacup at my feet. My own daughter had signed me away, had lied about my mind, my very sanity, without my knowledge or consent, with the same casualness as signing up for a new gym membership. "The plan is absolutely perfect," she went on, her voice filled with a smug satisfaction. "Next Tuesday, we'll just tell her she has a routine doctor's appointment. We'll take her to the home, check her in, and by the time she realizes what's actually happened, she'll already be a resident, and we'll have legal guardianship over her and her assets." It all clicked into place in a sickening, horrifying rush. The specialists, the fake medical reports they'd been commissioning, the constant, relentless narrative of my confusion. It had all been a meticulously planned farce to build a fraudulent legal case that would strip me of my freedom, my home, and my rights. I could hear David laughing approvingly in the background, and that sound, that validation of her cruelty, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "The best part of all," Emily said with a chilling, triumphant laugh, "is that she'll never suspect a thing. She still tells me, Thank you for taking such good care of me, sweetie, when I bring her breakfast in bed. If she only knew I'm just keeping her calm and docile while I arrange her living funeral. In that moment, something inside me didn't just break. It turned to stone. It wasn't just the betrayal of the plan. It was the deep, soul-crushing humiliation of realizing that while I was blessing her name in my nightly prayers, thanking God for such a caring daughter, she was counting down the days until she could be rid of me. With the $485,000 we'll get from the house, we can pay off all our credit card debts, buy a new luxury car, and finally take that 2-week trip to Europe we've always wanted, she chirped excitedly. And we won't have to pretend to love her anymore. No more Sundays having to eat her horrible dry pot roast. No more having to listen to her boring, repetitive stories from when she was young. My pot roast, which I slow cooked for 8 hours with so much love. My stories, which I told because I desperately wanted to share my history, our family's history, with her. All of it, a terrible burden to be endured. The final words of the message froze my very soul and stopped my heart. In a month, Mom will be in the home and will own everything. We can finally live in peace. Besides, her life insurance policy has us as the sole beneficiaries, so if something, were to happen to her at the home, God forgive me for saying this, but it wouldn't be the worst thing financially for us. They weren't just planning to steal my life while I was living. They were already coldly calculating the profit they would make from my death. The message ended with them cheerfully debating which Italian restaurant to go to for dinner that night. I sat on my cold kitchen floor for what felt like an eternity, surrounded by the shards of my broken teacup, a perfect metaphor for my shattered life. I replayed the message again and again, praying I had heard it wrong, praying it was some kind of cruel, twisted nightmare. But as the first rays of dawn crept through my kitchen window, the profound, paralyzing sadness began to morph and harden into something else entirely. Pure, cold, unshakable resolve. They thought I was a fragile, confused old woman. They had foolishly forgotten that I was the woman who had raised a child completely alone, who had worked 3 jobs simultaneously to keep a roof over our heads, who had clawed her way out of poverty with her bare, bleeding hands. They had forgotten that I was a survivor. That morning, I woke at 5 a.m. sharp, not from sleep, but from a long, dark night of strategic planning. I put on my crimson pantsuit, the one I had worn with such pride to her college graduation. I did my makeup with a steady hand, styled my hair elegantly, and put on the simple pearl earrings my mother had left me. I would not be a victim. Today, I would be a warrior. I left a simple, deceptively calm note on the kitchen table. Went out early to run some important errands. Will be back this afternoon. Love, Mom. My first stop was the bank. I was waiting at the glass doors at 8 a.m. when they opened. "Good morning, Eleanor," said Nora, the kind branch manager who had known me and my financial struggles for 15 years. "Nora," I said, my voice clear and firm, devoid of any emotion. "I need to review every single transaction on my account for the last 6 months, and I want to change all my beneficiaries, effective immediately." Nora's friendly brow furrowed with concern as she looked at her computer screen. "Eleanor, that's no problem, but I do see several recent inquiries here from your daughter, Emily. She presented a signed and notarized letter from you, authorizing her to review your statements to help you with your finances." My blood ran cold, but my voice remained even. "Nora, I never signed any such letter. May I please see it?" When she produced the document, I saw the forgery immediately. It was a close copy, a good attempt, but the slant of the R in my last name was wrong. It was a mistake I never made. "This is a clever forgery," I stated, sliding my driver's license across the counter so she could compare the authentic signatures. "My daughter has been committing bank fraud. I need you to immediately cancel any and all authorizations she has and put a high-level security alert on all of my accounts." Nora turned pale as the seriousness of the situation dawned on her. For the next hour, we worked diligently to secure everything. I transferred my entire life savings of $8,750 to a brand new, completely separate account that only I could access. I changed all the passwords and security questions, and, in a move that brought me a grim sense of satisfaction, I officially changed the beneficiary of my life insurance policy from Emily and David to the Golden Hope Foundation, a wonderful local charity that supports elderly people who have been abandoned by their families. They would not see another single cent of my money in this life or the next. My second stop was the county clerk's office, the den of the accomplice cousin, Cindy. I walked in unannounced, a small, high-fidelity audio recorder hidden and active in my purse. "Good morning, Cindy," I said, with a disarmingly sweet smile that didn't reach my eyes. "I've come to check on the status of my property. Emily mentioned you were helping with some paperwork." Cindy's face went from pale to ghostly white in a split second. "Aunt Eleanor! What are you doing here?" Her hands trembled as she instinctively tried to cover a stack of papers on her desk. "Don't worry, dear," I said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I know everything. I know about the plan to steal my house, I know about the forged signatures, and I know you've been helping them from your position here." I took out my phone and played just the first 5 seconds of Emily's voice message. Cindy slumped in her chair and burst into theatrical tears. "Aunt Eleanor, I'm so sorry. Emily convinced me that you couldn't take care of yourself anymore. She said it was for your own good." "It was for money, Cindy. Don't insult my intelligence," I said flatly, my voice like ice. "Now, you have 2 simple choices. You help me reverse every single fraudulent document you've created and provide me with copies, or I walk straight to your boss and the district attorney with this recording and have you charged with multiple felonies." Sobbing uncontrollably, she confessed everything in painstaking detail and spent the next 2 hours helping me invalidate every fake document, providing me with a thick stack of copies as damning evidence. My third and final stop of the day was the prestigious downtown office of Jessica Peterson, the sharpest and most feared litigator in Charlotte. "Ms. Peterson," I said, laying out the thick folder of meticulously organized evidence on her polished mahogany desk. "I need your help to stop a massive, insidious fraud being perpetrated against me by my own daughter and her husband." Ms. Peterson, a woman with eyes that could see right through you, reviewed the documents in silence, her expression growing more serious and then more outraged with each page she turned. "Mrs. Miller," she finally said, looking up at me with a newfound respect, "this is one of the most egregious and cold-hearted cases of elder fraud I have ever had the misfortune to encounter. We have more than enough evidence here to press serious criminal charges. Tell me, what is it precisely that you want to achieve?" "I want justice," I replied, my voice unwavering. "But more than that, I want my daughter to learn, once and for all, that her actions have severe, life-altering consequences. For my entire 66 years, I have been too kind, too generous, too forgiving. It is time I learned to defend myself." The lawyer smiled, a flash of admiration and steel in her eyes. "Mrs. Miller, we are going to prepare a legal strategy that will not only protect your rights and assets, but will send a very, very clear message." We spent the rest of the afternoon preparing a comprehensive civil lawsuit for fraud, forgery, and attempted illegal appropriation, as well as a formal criminal complaint to be filed against Emily, David, and Cindy. When I returned home that evening, I felt a sense of power and control I hadn't felt in decades. Emily and David were lounging on my couch, watching my television, completely oblivious. "Hi, Mom," Emily chirped with that fake, cloying smile. "How were your errands?" "Very productive, sweetie," I replied calmly, meeting her gaze. "I took care of exactly what I needed to. By the way, we're having some important visitors tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock sharp. I do hope you'll both be here to receive them." "What visitors?" David asked, his curiosity piqued. "Oh, you'll see," I said with a mysterious Mona Lisa smile. "They're people who are going to help us clarify some very important things about this family's future." That night, for the first time in many, many months, I slept like a baby, with the profound peace of mind that comes from knowing that justice was coming with the morning sun. The next day, at exactly 10 a.m., the doorbell chimed. "I'll get it," I announced, rising gracefully before either of them could move. At my front door stood my lawyer, Jessica Peterson, looking formidable in her power suit, flanked by 2 uniformed police officers and an official public notary. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller," Miss Peterson said formally. "We are here to execute the orders we discussed yesterday." Emily and David scrambled off the sofa, their faces complete masks of utter confusion and dawning horror. "Mom, what is going on? Who are all these people?" "Sit down," I commanded with a newfound authority that stunned them into silence. "It's time you finally learned the truth." Ms. Peterson stepped forward into the center of my living room. "Ms. Emily Williams and Mr. David Williams, I am here on behalf of Mrs. Eleanor Miller to formally inform you that we have discovered irrefutable and overwhelming evidence of felony fraud, forgery of official documents, and a criminal conspiracy to illegally appropriate her assets." Their faces went completely, ghastly white. "What are you talking about?" Emily stammered, her voice a pathetic squeak. "We would never do anything like that." "Emily," I said, holding up my phone as if it were a weapon. "Do you want me to play for everyone in this room the very detailed voice message you accidentally sent to my phone 2 days ago?" In that single, dreadful instant, I saw every last drop of blood drain from my daughter's face. Her eyes, wide with pure, unadulterated panic, locked onto mine as she finally, horribly realized that her perfect plan had been completely undone by her own careless, arrogant fingers. The moment of reckoning had finally arrived, and there was nowhere left for them to run or hide. The silence in my living room was so thick and heavy, it felt like you could cut it with a knife. "Attorney Peterson?" I said, my voice as steady and calm as a frozen lake. "Please proceed with the presentation of the evidence." The attorney opened her sleek leather briefcase with a decisive snap. "Let's begin with the forgeries, shall we?" she said, placing the fraudulent bank authorization document on the coffee table in front of them. She then held up my driver's license next to it. "This is your mother's authentic, legal signature. And this is the clumsy forgery you presented at her bank. A handwriting expert has already confirmed the discrepancies." Mom asked me to help her. She was forgetting to pay her bills all the time," Emily cried, her voice trembling with the lie. "Stop lying, Emily," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "There's no escape now." I pressed the play button on my phone. My daughter's own voice, so full of contempt, filled the room. "David, I can't take having my mother in this house anymore." I watched with a detached coldness as Emily's face completely crumbled, her mask of innocence shattering as she was forced to listen to her own treacherous words. "Turn that off!" she suddenly screamed, lunging for my phone, but one of the tall police officers immediately and firmly stepped in her path. "This is just getting started, honey," I told her, a cold smile touching my lips. Sit down and listen to the wonderful future you had so meticulously planned for your loving mother. The audio continued to play, detailing the entire sordid plan to steal the house with Cindy's illegal help. "This is a setup! A complete setup!" David yelled, jumping to his feet and pointing an accusing finger at my lawyer. "You're a manipulative parasite. You're manipulating her to accuse us of things we never did." "Mr. Williams," Ms. Peterson said with a professionally serene smile, "I assure you, we haven't even gotten to the most interesting and damning part yet." She pulled another official-looking document from her briefcase. "This is a full, signed, and notarized confession from your cousin, Ms. Carol Rodriguez. In this lengthy confession, she details exactly how you and your wife repeatedly pressured her to forge official documents, how you created fraudulent medical reports, and how you planned to use these illegal documents to have your own mother declared mentally incompetent in a court of law in order to steal her home." I saw in Emily's eyes the sickening, final realization that her partner in crime had betrayed her to save herself. "Cindy's a liar, a pathetic, backstabbing liar," she shrieked in desperation. "She made all of that up to save her own skin." "Oh, really, dear?" I asked, pulling out the small, discreet digital recorder from my purse, because, as a matter of fact, I also have our entire conversation from her office yesterday recorded for posterity. I pressed the play button, and Cindy's voice, choked with sobbing and fear, filled the room, confessing every last detail of their criminal enterprise. David sank heavily onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare," he mumbled. "No, David," I said firmly, standing over him. "This is justice." The nightmare was me, living in my own home, feeling like a prisoner in a gilded cage, listening to you and my daughter talk about me as if I were a worthless nuisance, watching you plot and scheme to steal everything I've ever worked for in my entire life. The attorney continued her relentless presentation of the evidence. "We also have the fraudulent medical reports that you commissioned," she said, showing them the documents where corrupt, paid-off doctors had written that I had senile dementia and was incapable of making sound decisions for myself. For the record, Mrs. Miller voluntarily underwent a full psychological and cognitive evaluation yesterday, conducted by Dr. Raymond Morales, the esteemed head of geriatrics at Charlotte General Hospital. She pulled out the official, sealed report. The results show that Mrs. Miller is in perfect mental and physical condition, with a clarity and reasoning ability that is, and I quote, "superior to the average for her age. This legally proves that all the previous medical reports you obtained were entirely fabricated." Emily started to cry then, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were the hot, frustrated tears of a master manipulator who had finally been outmaneuvered. "Mom, please! We just wanted to take care of you. We thought it would be better for you." "Take care of me?" I asked with a bitter, incredulous laugh. "By stealing my house and planning to have me locked away against my will?" Let's not forget, Emily, that in that very revealing message, you also said you hoped I would die soon so that you and David could collect on my life insurance policy. "I never said that! I would never say that!" she screamed, her face a mask of fake indignation. I calmly replayed that specific soul-destroying part of the audio for all to hear. The silence that followed was devastating and complete. Even the seasoned police officers exchanged looks of utter disgust upon hearing a daughter talk about her mother's potential death as a financial opportunity. The attorney then presented the bank statements, showing the itemized list of the $8,750 Emily had systematically stolen from my accounts over the past 6 months. "Enough with the lies!" I finally boomed, my composure breaking for just a moment in a wave of righteous anger. Do you have any idea what hurts the most, Emily? It's not the house. It's not even the money. It's that for all these months, while I hugged you and told you how much I loved you, you were secretly and coldly calculating how much money you were going to make from my eventual death. She finally broke down completely then, collapsing into a heap of hysterical, self-pitying sobs. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. We were just so desperate for money. We had so many debts. Desperation is an explanation, not an excuse for betrayal, I told her, my heart now as hard as a diamond. My entire life, I gave you everything I had. All you ever had to do was ask me honestly. But instead of trusting in my love for you, you chose to lie, to steal, and to try and destroy me. The senior police officer approached with 2 pairs of handcuffs in his hand. Mrs. Miller, he asked respectfully, do you wish to proceed with the arrests and press formal charges? I looked at my daughter, a pathetic, sobbing mess on the floor of the home I had built for her. For one fleeting, painful moment, a pang of maternal instinct, of a lifetime of love, shot through me. But then I remembered her cold, calculating voice on that recording, her cruel laughter, her casual disregard for my life. Yes, officer, I replied, my voice as firm and clear as a bell. Proceed with the arrests. Seeing my only child being placed in handcuffs in the middle of my own living room was, without a doubt, the most painful and surreal image of my entire 66 years of life. But it was also the precise moment that I reclaimed my dignity, my power, and my soul after months of feeling like a helpless, confused victim. Mom, please, Emily screamed, her voice raw with panic as the officer led her toward the door. You can't do this to me. I'm your daughter. I'm the only thing you have in this world. The bitter irony of her words was almost too much to bear. She had been the one who had decided, so cruelly and methodically, that I had no place in her world. David, on the other hand, looked at me with a pure, undiluted hatred that chilled my blood. This isn't over, you crazy old witch, he whispered venomously as he passed by me. You're going to pay for ruining our lives. Those words didn't scare me. They only served to confirm with absolute certainty that I had made the right and necessary decision by exposing them. The legal battle that followed was ugly and protracted. They tried to launch a vicious smear campaign against me, creating fake social media profiles and posting fabricated stories in local community groups, claiming that I had advanced dementia and had falsely accused them out of confusion and spite. Anonymous, hateful letters began arriving at my house, calling me a failed, unnatural mother who had raised a daughter who hated her. For one dark, lonely moment, in the dead of night, I almost gave up. I considered dropping all the charges just to make the pain stop. But then, while sorting through an old box of memories, I found a letter my own mother had written to me shortly before she died. My dearest Eleanor, her shaky handwriting read, If anyone, even your own beloved child, ever tries to trample on your dignity or take advantage of your good heart, you must remember that you are stronger than you think. True love never seeks to destroy, it never seeks to steal, and it never seeks to humiliate. Her words, a voice from the grave, gave me the renewed strength and conviction to see it all through to the very end. Facing a mountain of irrefutable damning evidence and the prospect of a long prison sentence, Emily and David finally offered an out-of-court settlement. I accept, I told my lawyer, but on one non-negotiable condition. I want a full public confession and apology, published in the same local news outlets and online forums where they so viciously slandered my name and my sanity. A week later, Desperate to avoid a public trial, they signed it. I recovered my stolen $8,750, plus an additional $15,000 in damages. But far more importantly, their signed confession was published for the entire city to see. We, Emily and David Williams, hereby admit that we falsely accused Mrs. Eleanor Miller of having mental problems. We admit that we planned to steal her property. Mrs. Miller is in perfect mental condition, and we invented these cruel stories to justify our own criminal actions. My name was cleared. My reputation was restored. My final act of justice was quiet, completely legal, and absolutely devastating for them. During our investigation, my lawyer had discovered that they had been cheating on their taxes for years, underreporting their income. As a responsible and law-abiding citizen, I felt it was my civic duty to send a detailed, anonymous tip to the IRS. They were swiftly audited and hit with a massive bill for $35,000 in back taxes and penalties, a crushing debt that forced them to sell their car and pawn their jewelry. The public scandal completely ruined them in our community. Emily was demoted at work and lost all chances of future promotion. David's career prospects vanished overnight. Their friends, horrified by what they had done, abandoned them. About 6 months later, I ran into a haggard-looking Emily at the mall. She approached me, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Mom," she whispered, her voice broken. Please forgive me. We've lost everything. Our credit is ruined. Our friends are gone. Our lives are a mess." I looked at the daughter I once adored, not with hatred, but with a sad and profound finality. "Emily, I didn't punish you. The consequences of your own choices punished you. For my own peace of mind, I forgive you, because holding on to hatred would only poison my own soul. But forgiving does not mean forgetting. It does not mean trusting you again. And it certainly does not mean giving you another chance to destroy my life." I turned and walked away from her, and I have never once looked back. Today, a year later, my life is wonderfully, blessedly unrecognizable. I sold that big house full of painful memories and bought a beautiful, sunny, and manageable apartment in a vibrant senior living community in Florida. I have finally taken up painting, a passion I had suppressed for decades. I volunteer 3 days a week at the Golden Hope Foundation, using my story to help other seniors who have been betrayed by their families find the strength to fight back. I have new friends. I have a new purpose. I have a profound and unshakable peace. I learned that my value as a human being isn't measured by how much I can sacrifice for others, but by the strength of my own self-respect. And I learned that true family isn't always about the blood you share. It's about the people who lift you up, who respect you, and who would never, ever see you as a mere resource to be exploited. At 67 years old, I finally learned that my life belongs to me and only me, and I deserve to live it with joy, dignity, and freedom. It is never, ever too late to be free. Did you like my story? If you did, please hit that thumbs up and let's meet in the comments below. I would truly love to hear your thoughts. On the screen right now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There is so much more to discover on Aunt Millie's Tales. Please don't forget to subscribe. I will see you in the next story.